It's time to redraft the 2020 NFL draft. It was a pretty fun draft in the moment, and I think it's a really fun draft to look back on. So we're going to have a lot of fun. If you missed last week, 2019 NFL redraft, I put that out last Wednesday. Every Wednesday up until the 2026 NFL draft, I'm going to be doing a different NFL redraft. So if you like this video, if you want to see more NFL redrafts, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's pull up the draft order for 2020, and you'll see who was actually picked in those spots. 2020 was a fun draft because in the moment, we were talking about a lot of quarterbacks. Of course, Joe Burrow, he went number one, but then there was the whole tank for Tua situation. You know, Justin Herbert was in this draft. A little bit later, we got Jalen Hurts. We got Jordan Love. So a really fun quarterback draft. And we knew that then, but when we're doing the redraft, it's also a really good conversation now. So quarterbacks are going to be a big factor. And then on top of that, we had two elite wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. Between the quarterbacks and those two, that's going to be the real challenge at the top of the draft. It's not like 2019 where we got a lot of, interior guys, a lot of linemen. This is the more flashy draft. This is the draft with the quarterbacks. This is the draft with elite wide receivers. And where those guys get placed is going to be the fun at the top. And so the question is, how do you rank all those quarterbacks? Where do you fit in those wide receivers? And that's really the question at the top of this draft. And so let's just jump right into it. Number one overall, he went number one. I think he still goes number one. I have Joe Burrow going back to the Bengals. The argument you could make against it is health. And you could say, well, he hasn't really been healthy. I would argue that's not really his fault. And even still, as great as some of the other quarterbacks are, as elite as Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are, I still think you pick Joe Burrow first. And a lot of that is position-based. Yes, you could argue Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb have both been better. But as we talked about in 2019, quarterbacks are just too valuable. And to get I think, still top 5 quarterback when he's healthy in Joe Burrow, you have to make that decision. So Joe Burrow stays number one for me. Number 2, Washington ended up going Chase Young. I think they go another quarterback. And this is where you can start to have some debates. How are you going to rank these quarterbacks? I have Justin Herbert going number 2 to Washington. And to me, he's the clear number 2 in this draft class. I am a big Justin Herbert fan. I am a Justin Herbert defender. I get we're 6 years in, not a big resume up until this point, not a ton of playoff success as well. But I do think in a pretty good draft class, Justin Herbert to me is still the number 2 quarterback. And I think Washington needs a quarterback at this point. Obviously, they have Jaden Daniels now, but at this point, they needed a quarterback. Didn't go Tua. They didn't go Justin Herbert initially, but I think they go Justin Herbert here. So then the question is, okay, what does Detroit do at 3? Do they want to do a quarterback? Jordan Love, Tua, Jalen Hurts? Do they go one of those? Or is this where one of the elite wide receivers go? That's the question. And a lot of it is positional value. At what point does an elite receiver take precedence over a still really good quarterback? And for me, I think this is where Justin Jefferson slots in. I have Justin Jefferson going 3rd. To me, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are just too talented to not pick over Justin Jefferson, even though I would agree Justin Jefferson is the best, just pure player in this draft. But positional value matters. But I think after Burrow and Herbert, the difference between Justin Jefferson and my 3rd quarterback, who we will get to soon, is just a little bit too much to take over the value. So I think Detroit goes Justin Jefferson. They can still make the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff trade, and Jared Goff with Justin Jefferson would be a whole lot of fun. And yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown at some point, Jahmyr Gibbs at some point. I think they go elite receiver, Justin Jefferson at 3. And I'm going to follow that up with the New York Giants selecting CeeDee Lamb. Kind of the same principle. How much difference is the elite CeeDee Lamb? And I do think, while I have him below Justin Jefferson, he's still an elite wide receiver. How big of a difference is that between CeeDee Lamb and the 3rd quarterback? I think it's still enough. CeeDee Lamb slots in at 4. Yes, the Giants needed a quarterback, but they've also needed an elite receiver for a long time. Obviously, they now have Malik Neighbors, but CeeDee Lamb in a New York Giants uniform, I mean, imagine in this hypothetical situation, going from CeeDee Lamb as a division rival to on your team. It's not necessarily a factor in this decision, but that would be a lot of fun if I'm a Giants fan. So I have Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb going back to back. Now is where we get back to quarterbacks. And I think the Dolphins end up taking a quarterback, not Tua. We will talk about Tua later on, but I don't think he's the third best quarterback in this draft class. I have the Dolphins selecting Jordan Love as my third quarterback, fifth overall. There's going to be debate on who you think the third quarterback is. You can make the case for Tua. To me, that's not a conversation, but he has had some highs, and we will talk Tua more. But the bigger question is going to be between Jordan Love, who I have going fifth, and then the Chargers also going to quarterback. I obviously can't pick Justin Herbert, but I have Jalen Hurts going sixth. And that's a fun debate to have. Jordan Love versus Jalen Hurts in this redraft. Jalen Hurts has been more successful. He's started for longer. Jordan Love didn't start for the first couple of years. And Jalen Hurts has had a lot of success. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But how much is that Jalen Hurts and how much is that the Eagles? And that's the question you have to decide if you're Miami at number 5 picking here. To me, I would rather have Jordan Love just as a pure quarterback based on what we've seen in just any situation. Now, if you're the Eagles, yeah, Jalen Hurts probably is a better option for you, especially the last couple of years. He doesn't make mistakes. He's able to lead your team, a really loaded team, but it worked for Jalen Hurts. And I'm not saying Jordan Love couldn't do that, but I think regardless of who you have on your team, I think I picked Jordan Love in a vacuum. So I have Jordan Love going 5, Jalen Hurts going 6. Both teams that needed a quarterback, both teams picked a quarterback. They just get slightly different ones in this redraft. So now we've gotten through, to me, the top quarterbacks. Again, we will talk about Tua and the elite wide receivers. Those are the top 6. If you want to argue somebody else should slot in, that's fine. But that's kind of the elite offensive group. Now we get to number 7. And 7, I have Carolina selecting Derek Brown again. I think he's been an elite defensive tackle for them. Similar to the 2019 redraft, I had Josh Hines-Allen going 7 again to Jacksonville. I think it's the same situation. A really good defensive player, maybe at a position that's not as valued as certainly quarterback, but he's been an elite player. Carolina, I think, is just fine selecting him, even though they don't get one of the top offensive players. Number 8, Isaiah Simmons, definitely not the pick for Arizona. I have them just selecting the best player available, and I think that is Tristan Wirfs, the right tackle, formerly of Tampa Bay. He was highly thought of going into the draft. He ended up going 13, so a little bit of a rise, but he's just been, again, one of the best pure players in this draft. I think him, Justin Jefferson, obviously Joe Burrow or whoever you have number 1 quarterback, Derek Brown, a couple other guys. Those are the best just pure players in this draft. And Tristan Wirfs at a valuable position. Tackles are really valuable, even though he has mainly played right tackle. And I think Arizona just needs really good players. So I have Tristan Wirfs going 8. Jacksonville at number 9, went CJ Henderson initially, not going CJ Henderson, but I have another defensive back and who I think is the best corner in this draft, and that's AJ Terrell. Also went in the first round, similar to Tristan Wirfs, only gets bumped up a few spots, but he's been the best corner in this draft class. Jacksonville, I think, runs it back with another corner, just a slightly different one. Number 10, Jedrick Wills was the pick for Cleveland. Don't have him going, but I am sticking with offensive line. I have Andrew Thomas, who went 4 to the New York, falls a little bit just because of the elite guys at the top, but he's been a really good left tackle. Now, the problem is he's been hurt and he has struggled with injury. That's part of the reason why I have Tristan Wirfs going first. And I just think even then I still have Tristan Wirfs as the better player. But when he's played, he's been a really good left tackle. And I think Cleveland is okay getting an elite left tackle when he plays in Andrew Thomas. Falls a little bit, but still a top 10 pick. Then that brings us to number 11. And I'm just going to say the player and then we're going to talk about what this means. Number 11, I have Jonathan Taylor, who was a second round pick, comes all the way up to number 11. Now, there is a question on where running backs go. That's always a question in the real draft, and then certainly in these redrafts. 2019, I had Josh Jacobs as the first running back. I had him going 24 again to the Raiders in 2019. And I said that running backs typically don't go in the first round, right? That's what we've been told. But when you get an elite running back, and I think Jonathan Taylor, probably more than Josh Jacobs, is an elite running back. So then the question is, how high can you take him? And initially I had him higher. I think the top 6 is tough because you get just elite quarterbacks, elite receivers. You could argue maybe Carolina goes Jonathan Taylor at 7, Arizona at 8, But guys like Derek Brown, Tristan Wirfs, AJ Terrell, those are elite players and elite players at their position. So then the question is, well, Jonathan Taylor is an elite player at maybe a not so elite position. So how high can he actually go? But I think for someone who is an elite running back, is an elite player regardless of position, this was kind of as low as I wanted to put him. Because I think now we're kind of getting done with the elite players in this draft class, and I don't want to put Jonathan Taylor too much lower. You could argue he should be in the top 10. I have him going to New York at 11. Would he have had as much success playing for the Jets? Probably not, but that's a different conversation. I think the Jets take him at 11 just due to the value. Number 12, I have my third receiver coming off the board. Definitely not Henry Ruggs, but I have the Raiders going T. Higgins, who was the first pick in the second round in the real draft. He gets all the way up to number 12. Not an elite receiver, at least when we're comparing to Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, but a really, really good receiver. And he's an elite number 2 receiver. He could be a really good number 1 receiver if he goes somewhere else. And I think the Raiders still go with receiver. I think at that point, they have Derek Carr, could use another quarterback, but they could use weapons. And Jonathan Taylor would have fit in nicely. They obviously picked Josh Jacobs the year before. But Josh Jacobs, T. Higgins, that's a good starting point to an offense. So I have T. Higgins going 12. 13, Buccaneers can't select Tristan Wirfs, who went 5 spots higher. So I'm just going best player available, and I have Jalen Johnson, cornerback from the Bears. My second corner in this draft class. He's been an elite corner on a not so good defense in his career, but I think Tampa Bay would fit in nicely with kind of their secondary at the time. I think they go Jalen Johnson at 13. 14, 49ers are going to continue to beef up their defensive line. I had them going Justin Madubuike, formerly Nandi Madubuike. They went Javon Kinlaw at the time, which seemed like just kind of the rich getting richer. 49ers known for a great defensive line. Javon Kinlaw never really worked out, but I think Madubuike, who was elite, I think in 2013, double-digit sacks, especially from a guy inside. He's one of the best interior guys in this class. 49ers just add to their strength, get Madubuike. 15, Broncos went Jerry Jeudy. I don't have a receiver that I think is worth going up this high. So I have them going Alex Highsmith, pass rusher, who has kind of gone under the radar just based on where he plays and who he plays with. But to me, he's an elite outside guy. Can not just rush the passer, good against the run. And, you know, I talk about in these redrafts, guys just fitting these teams. Alex Highsmith, if he wasn't a Steeler, would be a really good Denver Bronco. He just seems like he would fit, especially with where the Broncos are at now. So Alex Highsmith, jumping all the way from 102 all the way up to 215. Falcons at 16, can't go AJ Terrell, but I have them going another defensive player in Patrick Queen, who is the first off-ball linebacker, and to me, best off-ball linebacker in this group. Atlanta, they need defense. They can't go AJ Terrell, but they go Patrick Queen. He would just solidify their defense, and so I think that's kind of the floor for a really good inside linebacker. 17, Cowboys obviously can't go CeeDee Lamb. I have Brandon Ayuk going here at 17. And if you would tell me in a couple years that Brandon Ayuk is just never going to play football again, maybe I would switch this. And if you would say that his career was only, 6 years or really only 5 years, I don't know if that's worth it. I am going to bet, though, just on the talent. And I'm assuming he's going to play somewhere, at least in the NFL again. And I think if CeeDee Lamb isn't there, Brandon Ayuk, while not replicating his production, could be a really good number 1 receiver for Dallas. And so I think the talent is too much to pass up. I think him in Jerry World, that would bring out the best in him. So I think that's the selection there. Number 18, Austin Jackson, not the pick, but I am going to go offensive line. Miami ends up going Jordan Love in this redraft. So I'm going to go Kevin Dotson. Really good. Been playing right guard, can play kind of in the interior. And I said it last week, offensive linemen aren't exactly exciting. It's not exactly fun to be like, oh yeah, this is the player you're going to get in a redraft. And especially in a draft like this, where there's really elite quarterbacks, elite weapons. It's not exactly exciting to be like, okay, Kevin Dotson, he's going to be your pick. But if you can get a reliable offensive lineman, regardless of what position along the line, that is good. And Kevin Dotson, I think, has been the best interior offensive lineman in this group. Will protect for Jordan Love in this new kind of iteration of the Dolphins. 19, the Raiders. And the Raiders, they picked T. Higgins, number 12, ended up going Damon Arnett in the initial draft. This is where I have Tua slotting in, and I have Tua going 19. Now, you can make the case how the last couple of years have gone that Tua wouldn't be a first-round pick, and you can make that case, and I wouldn't necessarily be mad at it. Hasn't been a good couple of years for Tua. But I think when he was right, and the peak of Tua is still a really good quarterback. And I don't think up with the likes of, obviously Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, even, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, I think have had more success, and I would rather have them. But if we're comparing to just all the other quarterback situations, and I think every year it seems like 10 teams are really looking for a quarterback, the peak of Tua is still worth taking in the first round. And I think the Raiders do this here. I mentioned Derek Carr, that was kind of his time. I think Tua comes in as kind of his replacement. And you give him T. Higgins, you have Josh Jacobs, and you try to build an offense around him. And I think he's shown enough that he's still worth taking. Kind of in this range that Daniel Jones went in my 2019 redraft. Kind of in this middle, kind of starting towards the late end of the first round. Still worth taking. A lot of it is obviously the positional value, but Tua I think is worth taking just based on what we've seen, even if it's been in limited minutes. Number 20, Jacksonville goes, to me, just best defensive player available. I have them taking Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety for Tampa Bay. He's been an elite safety at times. He's been an all-pro. He's been a Pro Bowler. And there's not necessarily a pass rusher that I like for Jacksonville in this situation, but they need defense. I think that would solidify the back end for Jacksonville. So I really like that pick. Kind of wanted to get him up higher, but I think this is where he falls, and Jacksonville just gets good value in this redraft. 21, Eagles definitely not doing Jalen Reagor. You could argue a wide receiver, and we're going to talk about a couple towards the end, but I don't necessarily think they need receiver because in this situation, they have A.J. Brown. They now don't have Jalen Hurts, so they're looking for a quarterback, but I think they go defense. And I think specifically what we've seen the last couple of years, it makes it easier because you can really see and visualize what this player would do. I have Zach Bond going to Philadelphia. He's been an elite player once he got to Philly. It kind of took him a while to find where he needed to be, both team and position, but now he's been elite. And so I think starting in Philly would be a great pick. Philly knows how to use him. So it could be this is a steal just based on how the last couple of years have looked. 22, Minnesota can't get Justin Jefferson, unfortunately. So I am going to go another receiver, and I'm going to go Jerry Jeudy. He was kind of regarded as the number one receiver in this draft. Henry Ruggs ended up going first just due to his speed and the enticing nature that speed does for receivers. But I know a lot of people thought Jerry Jeudy was the most complete receiver, and he ended up going 15 to Denver. I don't think it was necessarily a bust, but he's definitely not lived up to expectations. However, as I said, I don't think he's a bust. I still think he's had a pretty good career. And if you swap Justin Jefferson and Jerry Jeudy, you're obviously missing a lot. I'm not trying to compare them at all. But I think Jerry Jeudy in a good situation shows more than he has in this kind of career that he's had. So I think he still deserves in the first round, gets in a better spot with Minnesota. So I have him going 22. 23, Chargers don't go Kenneth Murray. They go another off-ball linebacker. I have Jordan Brooks going 23. I think he's been the second best linebacker in this class behind Patrick Queen. Seahawks picked him up, 4 spots later. He moved up a little bit. Not as impactful, I think, as Patrick Queen, but he's just a tackle machine, and he's put up great stats. Chargers are happy to get him at 23. 24, Saints go another offensive lineman, not Cesar Ruiz. I have them going Mike Onwenu, who is now a Super Bowl offensive lineman. Didn't win the Super Bowl, but played in the Super Bowl with New England. Bounced around a little bit, but again, I talk about if you can get a very solid offensive lineman, that is worth your time. And the Saints had that with Cesar Ruiz. I think he's also a pretty good offensive lineman. I have Mike Onwenu a little bit higher, so I have them picking him, number 24 instead. 25, 49ers don't go Brandon Ayuk, but they go kind of the next best thing in Michael Pittman Jr., who was also right at the start of the second round, moves into the late first round. You could argue with the drama that the 49ers handled with Ayuk, that this might be better. And you could say for Michael Pittman's case, if he goes to the 49ers and if he stays healthy, he might be one of the best receivers in this draft class. He's been good with the Colts. Not great, just due to who he's played with. But I think you put him in the right situation, he could have been a really good wide receiver. So him in the 49ers is an enticing fit. 26, Packers don't go Jordan Love, which if you remember back at the time, Aaron Rodgers was not happy them taking Jordan Love. He was still an MVP quarterback. He wanted a player that could help them win now. So they don't go Jordan Love now in this case. Jordan Love went all the way up number 5. You could make the case for another weapon for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think there's one worth taking. So I'm going to beef up the defense. I have Jonathan Grenard going number 26. Aaron Rodgers, I think, will still be happy. Beef up the defense, gives them a better chance to win, and don't pick a quarterback who won't play for a couple years. So Jonathan Grenard, 26. 27, another great and underrated defensive player. I have Xavier McKinney going 27 to Seattle. They can't get Jordan Brooks, but they get an elite safety. Has played in New York, comes over to Seattle. I think would be a great free safety for Seattle. Number 28, can't go Patrick Queen, who moved up 12 spots to Atlanta. This is where I have Chase Young going. And Chase Young, if you remember, was the second pick in this draft. And at the time was considered an elite pass rushing prospect. Joe Burrow obviously went first, but this was the guy on defense. And similar to a couple guys in this draft, I don't want to necessarily consider him a bust. Did have some injury problems in the beginning. That definitely played a factor. But I think he still had a good enough career that somebody would take him kind of in this later part of the first round. And he's had kind of a nice second part to his career in New Orleans. And depending on how he ends up, it could be that he ends up a lot higher in this redraft later. But he did struggle enough in Washington, didn't have as much impact. So I think he falls a little bit, but still a good player. I think if he went to Baltimore, could be an elite player. So I think Baltimore is really happy getting him at 28. 29, I have Tennessee picking a guy that they've had the last couple of years, and that's L'Jarius Sneed. Cornerback, started in Kansas City, ends up moving to Tennessee. Tennessee gives him this big contract. I think they just released him or are getting rid of him, but he's been a really good corner. Maybe got paid a little bit too much based on what he was paid, but still a good corner. And I think Tennessee, if they had him from the beginning, would much prefer that. So I have Sneed going 29 to Tennessee. 30, another corner. I have Trayvon Diggs going number 30. Now, this is a fun player to mention because on his peak, he would go potentially top 10. You could argue him, AJ Terrell for the top corner. But then you look at where he is now, and he's essentially just being passed around and nobody seems to want him. So is that worthy of a first round pick? I think the Dolphins say yeah, and they give him a shot. If they can get any of what he showed the first couple of years, I think that's a win. So I think he still sneaks in here to the first round. 31, Minnesota is going to just go best player available, and I wanted to sneak him in here at the end of the first round. I have them going Cam Curl at 31. He's been an underrated part of the Rams defense. You know, he went, 216? So they got him really late, and he's turned into a reliable part of the Rams secondary. I think they just re-signed him as well. I wanted to fit him in. I think he's been a really underrated part of this draft class. You could argue a couple other guys, but I wanted to sneak him into 31 for Minnesota. And then 32, the final pick, famously or infamously, the Chiefs selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't think there's a running back worth taking at this point, but I am going to give the Chiefs another weapon. I'm going to go Juwan Jennings, who, funny enough, was picked right after Cam Curl. So the 31 and 32, they went 216 and 217 in the actual draft. They move all the way up to 31 and 32. And while it's not a running back, I do think it's a solid receiver that Kansas City could have used the last few years. He's been an underrated part of San Francisco. I think he'd fit in with Kansas City. Give Patrick Mahomes a big receiver, a big threat down the field. So Juwan Jennings goes 32. And that's going to wrap up the 2020 NFL redraft. As I said, it's a fun draft. There's a lot of big time elite talent, and not only elite talent, but like really famous and guys you talk about a lot. I said in 2019, it was a lot of also elite talent, but it's defensive tackles, it's offensive linemen who don't really get talked about as much. 2020 was Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Herbert, like elite guys at elite positions. So 2020, it's fun to talk about. It was fun to do the redraft. Some good names at the back half as well. So had some depth, but a lot of just really fun names at the top. As I said, I'm going to be doing NFL redrafts every Wednesday up until the 2026 NFL draft. So if you like this, if you want to see more NFL redrafts every week, make sure to like this video, subscribe, check out 2019, which we did last week, and I will see you next week for the 2021 NFL redraft.